The claim came out before he could swallow it. He said he spoke 9 languages, and the room breathed in like a crowd at kickoff. A few staff laughed. The guest in the linen suit smiled with bored certainty, as if he had heard this trick before. By noon, the sky over Victoria Island pressed a silver glare against the tower's glass. Malik Okoye carried a bucket for his mother and kept his eyes low. He had promised himself he would keep quiet until the scholarship exam at 2 p.m. He had even tied 9 knots in his wrist string to remind himself to save words for the right moment. Adase worked as a night shift cleaner on the event floors. A last-minute inspection forced her into an extra shift. She brought Malik to keep him safe and close. A security officer waved them through and warned that an important patron was touring the new cultural lounge. The warning sounded like a prayer and a threat. The patron moved like a man with ownership in his bones. His name was Faisal El-Nuri. People said he built ports and bought art, and never wasted a step. He paused when he saw the boy carrying supplies. He asked what a student was doing on a restricted floor. Malik answered too quickly. He said he loved languages, and he was on his way to sit for a fellowship exam. The patron's smile sharpened. He remarked that many boys loved many things until they were asked to prove it. The staff tittered. Adase lowered her face and asked Malik to keep silent. He felt heat rise in his neck. Pride crowded the small space beside shame. He said he spoke 9 languages. The laughter landed like coins on marble. He regretted it the moment sound left his mouth. Words could feed or burn. Today, they might do both. The lounge smelled of fresh polish and citrus cleaner. Far below, traffic hummed like a low drum. A project manager checked her tablet and whispered about a missing shipment. A catering supervisor argued with a driver who spoke only Wolof. A conservator from an overseas gallery arrived early and asked for the humidity controls in rapid Mandarin. A visiting curator from Dakar requested labels be changed into clear French before guests arrived at 1:30 p.m. Threads pulled tight at once. The patron enjoyed the spectacle. He said the boy should watch how adults solved real problems. The deadline for the exam ticked in Malik's pocket watch. A scratched hand-me-downs set 10 minutes fast on purpose. Adase touched his sleeve. She told him with her eyes that a job could vanish quicker than a rumor. He nodded and stayed still. He told himself that silence would protect them both. The driver's voice rose. The supervisor's face flushed. The conservator tapped the meter on her case and worried that the paintings would suffer in the wrong air. Malik shifted from one foot to another. Each knot on his wrist seemed to pulse. He counted them like steps on a bridge. 1 for English, 2 for Yoruba, 3 for Hausa, 4 for French, 5 for Arabic, 6 for Portuguese, 7 for Spanish, 8 for Russian, 9 for Mandarin. He breathed in and chose a crossing. He approached the catering supervisor and greeted the driver in Wolof-accented French, slow and respectful. The driver relaxed his shoulders. Malik switched into basic Wolof phrases he had learned from a neighbor who sold spices downstairs. He asked about the crates. The driver explained that the ones marked with a green stripe belonged to a sister venue. Wrong dock, wrong elevator. Malik turned to the supervisor and translated, careful with verbs and time. He called over a porter and directed the correct lift with hand signals learned from the floor stewards. 2 crates rolled the right way. Tension slipped a notch. He faced the conservator. He asked in Mandarin about the target relative humidity and temperature. She blinked at the boy, then answered with numbers and a tight worry. Malik repeated the targets to the building engineer in clear English and added that a portable dehumidifier sat idle in storage. The engineer moved. The air system adjusted. The conservator's breath steadied. Across the room, the curator frowned at a stack of labels. Malik stepped over and read one aloud in French, then suggested a smoother phrasing that had more dignity for the artist. The curator's posture eased. He handed over the red pen. The patron watched without speaking. The laughter stopped first. Then the room changed temperature. The staff looked at Adase as if the floor under her feet had risen by a snare. Malik returned to his mother and set down the bucket. He did not look at the patron. He studied the watch. 12:47 p.m. He could still make the exam if the elevator ran kind. A clerk rushed in with a custom document printed in Portuguese and stamped with a red error. The shipment would not clear for the evening reception unless someone called the office in time. The clerk asked if anyone could help to explain the mix-up. The words hung like a new bridge waiting for planks. The patron finally spoke. He said the boy could try if he wished to turn big claims into useful work. He said a call would be placed on speaker. The engineer held out a phone. The customs agent picked up. The line clicked and hissed. Malik felt his tongue go still. He thought of the scholarship hall across town and the chair with his name on a list. He thought of his mother's thin shoes and the way she smiled through fatigue. He understood that one path might close if he chose the other. He also understood that some doors only opened when someone else walked through first. He lifted the phone and asked for a patient ear in careful Portuguese. The clerk leaned in. The patron folded his arms. Outside the window, clouds stacked like ships waiting to dock. He hoped they would stay for the next chapter of the journey. He believed someone listening would pass the moment forward to a person who needed courage today. The line clicked alive, and Malik steadied his breath. The Portuguese unfurled clean and precise. He identified the shipment by seal number, then asked for the exact reason behind the hold. A pause followed. The agent explained that the crates were tagged for a cultural waiver that had never been filed. He pressed for the specific code. The agent referred to an exemption clause for non-commercial loans. He repeated it back word for word and requested a manual review. The room leaned closer without moving. Adase watched his hands. They were steady on the phone, but the wrist ring pulled tight against his skin. He needed a waiver. The lender was a foundation in Muscat. The contact spoke only Arabic and preferred written assurances in formal style. The customs desk would not accept an English summary. The lounge clock read 12:56 p.m. His exam admission closed at 1:45 p.m. He did the math and felt the window shrink. He asked the engineer for a quiet corner and a pen. He drafted the Arabic letter, line by line, naming the works, the loan period, and the insured value. He kept the tone dignified. He switched back to Portuguese and confirmed the text requirements. The agent agreed to accept a scanned copy with a callback to verify authorship. The project manager pulled up the lender's number. Malik called and explained the urgency in careful Arabic. The foundation officer listened. She asked for a guarantee from a responsible host with recognized status in the region. The air shifted. Every eye went to the patron. Faisal al-Nouri met the look and nodded once. Malik framed a statement that anchored the guarantee to the tower's operating entity. He read it back to the officer with exact titles. The officer approved the form. He sent the draft to her inbox and asked for a reply with the foundation seal. At 1:07 p.m., the reply arrived with a blue emblem and a digital signature. He forwarded it to the customs agent and requested the release receipt. The agent hesitated. A second flag had appeared from the port gate. 3 months earlier, a sister venue misdeclared a crate returning from Dakar. The profile now required a supervisory override. The override officer preferred Wolof for clarity. Malik knew greetings and market phrases. It would not be enough. He glanced at his watch. 1:10 p.m. The elevator ride, the street crossing, the traffic on Akin Adisala. The clock cut into him. He made a decision that would cost minutes and might save the day. He opened his old Data-Lite group chat. He had built it over a year of small errands and big favors. The members were drivers, dock clerks, market cousins, a university tutor, and a street poet who translated song lyrics for tips. He typed a short request in French, then in English. He asked if anyone fluent in Wolof could help for 5 minutes to explain an import code to a supervisory officer. The poet answered with a number. His aunt worked at the ferry pier. Malik tapped to call and asked for a relay in Wolof while he stayed on the customs line in Portuguese. The aunt joined the call. Her voice came warm and brisk.
He explained the exemption and read the code slowly. She carried it across in clear Wolof to the officer. The officer asked 2 verifying questions. Malik supplied the numbers and the loan dates. The aunt bridged the answers back. The override went through at 1:18 p.m. The agent promised a release receipt at the gate within 10 minutes. Malik thanked the aunt in French and Wolof. He sent a brief line to the group. He said the art would hang under the right air tonight. The room exhaled. The catering supervisor grinned into her sleeve. The conservator rested a hand on her case and looked younger. Adaize stood taller by a breath. The patron's gaze carried a new weight, as if a calculation had changed behind his eyes. He checked the time again, 1:20 p.m. The exam center was across the bridge and 2 quick turns inland. He could make it if nothing failed. He gathered his notes, wiped the phone screen on his shirt, and lifted the bucket by habit. Adaize reached for it. He let it go and took only the watch. The patron stepped into his path and spoke low. Malik listened without interrupting. A driver would take him. A seat would wait downstairs. The car would use a service route. Malik nodded once. Gratitude sat heavy and careful. It felt like a gift and a test in the same shape. They reached the elevator. Steel doors mirrored a boy who had just moved a room with words. They opened, then stalled, then reopened with an unkind chime. The engineer swore under his breath and tapped the panel. Malik stared at the floor display as if the numbers might obey his will. At 1:24 p.m., the lift began to descend. The patron slid a folded card into Malik's pocket. The card carried nothing but a number and a name. He did not look at it. He watched the levels count down and imagined a chair with his name on a list. He also imagined the cultural lounge at 6 p.m., cool and bright, with labels that read clean and true. He felt the shape of the day changing. He had solved a crisis. He had also opened a door he did not see the edges of. He kept one more knot in mind. It was the one no one else knew about. It led to something he had been building in secret for months. He hoped they would stay to see whether the lift carried him to the exam in time. He asked that they share the moment with someone who believed small skills could move heavy gates. The elevator released them into the lobby at 1:25 p.m. A black sedan idled by the curb. Heat rolled off the pavement. Malik slid into the back seat and pressed his palms to his knees. The watch ticked like a drum in a quiet room. Adaize stayed behind to finish her shift. The patron joined Malik and spoke to the driver with a small nod. The car cut into traffic. Sirens wailed somewhere distant. The bridge ahead slowed to a crawl. Malik reached into his backpack and pulled out a slim blue folder. He had planned to reveal it at the scholarship interview. The cover carried a hand-stenciled knot, 9 loops interlaced into a small circle. He placed it on his lap and said he wanted to show what the morning work had been for. Inside lay a 1-page plan, a crude budget, and a list of names. He called the plan 9 Knots. It proposed a language desk inside the tower. Teen interpreters would earn stipends. Cleaners' children would receive training, transport, and exam fees. A simple SMS switchboard would route requests by language and urgency. He had built a prototype on a borrowed phone. He showed message threads with code words and timestamps. The group had solved 23 small cases in the last 2 months. 1 lost shipment, 3 mislabeled invoices, a customs delay at the ferry, a family stuck at a clinic with no translator at 9:10 p.m. He pointed to the budget lines: 1 single desk, 2 tablets, a portable printer, and a stipend pool. He projected savings from fewer penalties and faster turns. He kept the numbers modest. He wanted the math to stand without charm. The patron read in silence. His posture shifted from amusement to attention. He asked where the volunteers came from. Malik answered that markets were schools if someone respected them. He said the desk would start with 9 languages and add more as the roster grew. At 1:31 p.m., the sedan braked hard. A fender bender blocked the access lane. The driver cursed under his breath. Motorbikes swarmed like fish finding gaps. The exam hall sat 3 turns past the bridge. Malik felt the window tighten again. He took a breath and added the part he had not told anyone. He said he had scheduled a live test at 6 p.m. during the lounge opening. A port liaison would ping the 9 knots number with a staged problem. The desk would resolve it in under 10 minutes. The goal was to prove value in public and lock in a pilot.
The patron asked who would guarantee the desk to guests and lenders. Malik looked out the window and said he had hoped for a partner with enough backbone to make it safe for others to join. He did not soften the words. He let the idea stand like a door that could open or remain shut. The driver edged into a service lane. The car inched forward. The bridge rattled under truck tires. Malik marked out his terms with care. Fair wages for cleaners, paid pathways for their children, transparent metrics posted monthly. He said the desk would be owned by the community, not absorbed into a private brand. The patrons studied the knot on the folder and asked how Malik would keep the desk from becoming charity theater. He answered by sliding a second sheet across the seat. It listed failure modes, token hires, unpaid trials, quiet retaliation. Each had a countermeasure, external audits, public dashboards, a hotline to a legal clinic. At 1:36 p.m., the car cleared the bridge. The exam center's roofline lifted beyond a row of jacaranda trees. Relief came and went in the same breath. A police barricade funneled all traffic into one lane. Time fell away in thin slices. Malik made a choice. He pushed the blue folder into the patron's hands and said the plan would live or die on its own merits. He asked for nothing that could not be defended in daylight. He added that the exam mattered to him, but not at the cost of a promise made to the workers whose names were on the page. The patron met his eyes and called the driver to the shoulder. The sedan coasted to a stop. A security escort from the tower had followed on a motorcycle. The rider pulled up and offered the spare helmet. The patron told Malik to take it. He said the rest would be waiting at 6 p.m. and the room would expect a demonstration. Malik swung onto the bike and held the helmet strap in shaking fingers. The rider gunned the engine. Wind tore the heat off his face. He watched the watch. 1:39 p.m. The road opened in a narrow ribbon. He held the knot string once, then let it fall against his wrist. He thought of desks and dashboards, of names written in ink instead of chalk. He thought of his mother on the event floor, standing a little taller. He hoped they would stay for the next turn in the road. He asked that they pass the story to someone who needed proof that a plan on paper could move a city. The motorcycle threaded through the bottleneck and slid to a stop at 1:52 p.m. Malik ran. The invigilator checked his slip and waved him in. His pulse steadied as the clock struck 2 p.m. He opened the paper and let the room narrow to ink and breath. The questions moved across continents. He wrote with economy. He translated a policy brief into crisp Hausa. He rendered a proverb into clean French. He summarized a civic debate in neutral Spanish. He kept one eye on the margins and one on the watch. By 2:47 p.m., he set down the pen and read the last line aloud in his head. He sealed the script. The hall smelled of paper and citrus disinfectant. When he stepped outside, the heat met him like a wall. His phone buzzed. The patron engineer reported that humidity held steady. The porter team confirmed the crates cleared the gate. A second stream of messages told a harder truth. Event staff planned a quiet slowdown over unpaid overtime. A cultural council officer asked for a signed partner letter by 5 p.m., where the microgrant would shift to another venue. He finally revealed the secret he had kept behind the ninth knot. 3 months earlier, he had filed a pilot grant for a youth language desk under a community cooperative. He used Adese's name as founding adult so the desk could stand without a corporate sponsor. The grant promised seed money if a host partner matched and agreed to public reporting. The terms were simple and firm. Living stipends for teen interpreters, back pay for any overtime owed to cleaners, monthly dashboards showing requests, response times, and outcomes, a hotline for grievances independent of management. The council had scheduled a mention on public radio at 5:30 p.m. to announce whichever partner signed first. At 3:40 p.m., Malik returned to the tower with the rider. The patron awaited him in a glass-walled office that looked toward the water. Afternoon glare cut across the floor like white silk. Malik laid the award letter on the table. He explained the matching requirement. He described the oversight board, which included a retired judge and a market association elder. He added that the dashboards were ready to go live on a simple site at 5:30 p.m. He kept his hands flat to stop them from shaking. The patron read the letter twice. He asked if the public metrics could make the tower look weak. Malik answered that hidden problems already made it weak. Shared numbers made it honest and faster to fix. Rising voices outside drew nearer. The steward from the night shift had arrived with a list of names and hours. She spoke quietly, but with spine. The numbers were not small. The patron's jaw tightened. Finance would argue donors would be on the carpet by 6 p.m. The midpoint turned when the council officer called back. She said the radio slot could not move. A hospital had requested translation support for an intake desk next week and wanted to feature any partner willing to scale. The offer sounded like a door opening and a siren sounding at once. Malik set the blue folder beside the award letter. He explained the matching requirement. He described the oversight board, which included a retired judge and a market association elder. He added that the dashboards were ready to go live on a simple site at 5:30 p.m. The turning point arrived in a quiet sentence. The patron said the tower would sign if the steward co-signed and if the council named an independent monitor. He insisted on timelines and audits. He asked that the first month focus on the languages most used by staff families. At 4:58 p.m., the steward arrived with a pen already uncapped. She read each clause and nodded. The patron called payroll and ordered overtime arrears processed with same-day slips. He asked facilities to clear a small office beside the service corridor and to bring 2 desks, a printer, and a kettle. They gathered at a long counter under a clock that ticked too loud. The signatures went down at 4:58 p.m. The steward pressed the seal with careful force. The council officer received a scanned copy at 4:59 p.m. The radio producer texted a single line that felt like a drumbeat. Confirmed for 5:30 p.m. The building changed temperature again. Word moved faster than lifts. A porter sent a thumbs-up emoji to the group thread. A cashier on the mezzanine wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. Adese stood with a hand on the new key and did not speak for a long breath. Malik looked at the clock and at the folded card in his pocket. He felt the day tilt toward evening. The demonstration would begin at 6 p.m. A staged call would arrive and land on the new desk. It would be public this time. Public in a way that could not be undone. He hoped they would come back to see if a room full of strangers could build this system in real time. He asked that they pass the story to someone who needed proof that a plan on paper could move a city. By 5:30 p.m., the radio mention went out. Curious guests drifted toward the new desk beside the service corridor. A kettle hissed. 2 donated tablets blinked awake. The steward pinned a paper sign that read 9 knots in careful ink. Adese arranged chairs as if setting a tiny courtroom for fairness. At 5:58 p.m., Malik checked the dashboard. The stage test would ping at 6:05 p.m. He breathed through his nose and pressed the 9th knot. Faisal stood a few steps back with his arms loose at his sides. He watched like a man who had finally decided to be surprised on purpose. The first ring landed early, at 6:02 p.m. It was not the stage test.
A hospital intake desk needed help for a family from Asmara. The language on the line was Tigrinya. It was not one of the 9. The room tightened. A donor cleared his throat. A planner whispered that they could stall until the staged call arrived. I pictured the family under bright lights and fluorescent fatigue. I pictured the knots on my wrist like keys. I chose the harder door. I canceled the staged test with a single message. I wrote live assist in the group thread and asked for Tigrinya within 5 minutes. The street poet replied with a name. A barista from the ferry market had a cousin 2 blocks away who could help.
Faisal leaned forward. He asked what was needed. Malik answered without lifting his eyes. He needed open Wi-Fi for guest devices, a private corner for confidentiality, and mobile data for 2 volunteers. Faisal nodded to facilities. The network login appeared on a placard in under a minute. At 6:06 p.m., the cousin joined by video from a quiet stairwell. Malik built a 3-way bridge. He drafted a 1-page intake in plain English and mirrored it in simple French for cross-checks. The cousin carried questions and answers in clear Tigrinya. The nurse on the desk relaxed into the rhythm. The father on the line did not know his blood type. The nurse asked for allergies and medications. The cousin relayed each line with patience. Malik kept times and names on a clipboard with block letters. He repeated each key detail back to the nurse to confirm accuracy. At 6:12 p.m., the nurse reported that the triage was complete. The family would be moved to an observation bay with an interpreter already scheduled for the morning. The intake desk asked if 9 knots could list a contact for follow-up. Malik supplied the cooperative number and the desk hours. Silence held for half a breath, then loosened into sound. The steward blinked fast and covered it with a cough. Ada A's pressed a palm against the kettle as if grounding herself. Faisal's posture changed again. He looked lighter in the face and heavier in the spine. The dashboard ticked. 1 request resolved. Average time, 9 minutes. Languages handled, 10. The new line made the room smile in a way that felt earned and a little unreal. The second ring landed at 6:18 p.m. It was the port liaison with a mislabeled code. Yoruba and English were enough. 2 teens at the desk handled it with tidy notes and a small laugh they tried to hide. The engineer brought a fan that rattled like a guitar. The room felt like a workshop and a chapel held in the same walls. Faisal stepped to the counter and asked for the agreements. He signed a 1-year endowment with quarterly public audits. He authorized overtime arrears for cleaners and set a wage floor for contracted staff. He asked payroll to leave the slips at the desk before the night ended. His voice carried the steadiness of a man trying to match the courage he had just seen. At 7:05 p.m., the radio station called for a short update. The council officer said a partner had launched a cooperative desk that handled a complex intake in minutes. She credited the cleaners network and a 14-year-old who tied 9 knots on his wrist to remember whom he served. Later, under cooler air and low music, guests drifted past paintings that finally hung under the right humidity. The labels read clean and true. A porter held his payslip like a passport. The steward laughed through tears and did not apologize for either. Malik stepped into the corridor and checked his phone. A message from the exam board arrived at 7:42 p.m. He had earned the fellowship with distinction. He closed his eyes and let the news seat itself beside the work instead of on top of it. He untied the wrist string and retied it with a 10th loop. It was not for a language. It was for the promise to add one more voice whenever a gap appeared. He decided that the knot would stay empty until the desk named the next tongue together. Before the building slept, he walked his mother through the tiny office with the kettle and the fan and the 2 tablets. She ran her hand along the desk and stood a little taller again. Faisal paused at the door and thanked them without ceremony. He looked like a man who had stepped back into his own beginnings and found a better use for them. By the next morning, the dashboard showed 13 requests resolved. None were dramatic by themselves. Together, they drew a new map on the small screen and on a larger city. He asked that they leave a comment about a time a small skill opened a big door. They could subscribe to hear more true-to-life lessons told with heart.